Hello, this is the clock guy. I have two clocks to show you today. They are very similar. One is a very important clock in clock history or horology. It was made by Eli Terry in the 1820s. Eli Terry was actually the inventor of interchangeable parts and mass production. It was not Eli Whitney, as people have thought all these years, and I was taught in school. It was not the cotton gin. It was actually these clocks, and it was called the Porter contract. Terry entered into a contract famously known as the Porter contract, 1807 or so, early 1800s. Edward and Levi Porter, Waterbury, Connecticut. They wanted him to make 4,000 clocks in 3 years, which was unheard of at that time. So he spent the first year planning and building the machinery, and then the second year he produced 1,000 clocks, which was still unheard of at that time. And then the third year he made the remaining 3,000 clocks. And with that, the Industrial Revolution took off. Eli Terry's apprentices were Seth Thomas, which you probably know the name, and Chauncey Jerome. Chauncey Jerome, after apprenticing with Terry, moved to Bristol, Connecticut. And would you like to guess how many clocks he made? Chauncey Jerome made 200,000 clocks in 1840 in 1 year. 200,000 compared to a few hundred prior to the Terry Porter contract. So that little piece of history is why the Eli Terry clocks are so valuable, and I will eventually take the face off of this so you can see inside. He actually called them patent clocks, invented by Eli Terry, made and sold in Plymouth, Connecticut. E. Terry and Sons. Warranted if well used. And the directions on the sides. These labels are real important because they date the clocks. Walnut on top, and then mostly veneers. Mahogany was their favorite. And this replica, made in the 1970s, has walnut on top with mahogany veneers. It's just a beautiful clock. You can see the finials are made of wood rather than brass. The very first Terry clocks, the early 1800s, the finials are made of pewter, as were the hands. They were cast pewter. These are stamped steel. And at a glance, they're hard to tell apart. Especially if you only had one to look at and you didn't have anything to compare it to. Terry clock is weight driven. There's weights up there, which I'll show you when I take the face off. and the cables go from the movement up here to these spools, and then you can see through here, and then they run down and are attached to the weights. This clock, on the other hand, is spring driven, which you will see when I take the face off. I'll show you more in depth. Okay, I'll take the face off now. Okay, with their faces off and their doors open, you can definitely start seeing some differences. Eli Terry again made his clocks with wooden movements. There are weights on the side, so it is weight driven, it is not spring driven. It also has just a bell for a chime. That's probably one of the easiest ways to recognize an old clock from a newer clock or a remake, is that they rarely, if ever, were Westminster chime. This is a pretty modern movement made by Mata in the 1970s. And now you can see the three arbors, and because those three arbors wind springs. That round thing is a spring barrel right there with the teeth on it. So there's a very, very heavy duty spring inside there, as well as in that one and the one over there. More convenient to have springs rather than to have these weights, which had to be wound up every day. And they would ride in here, this shaft. The weights are around 3 pounds each, so it also adds to the weight of the clock. Can't really turn this without the hand, so I'll put the minute hand on. And with 3 sets of chimes, we know that is the 3/4 hour. This is a great sounding clock. If you're looking for an old clock, like an old Terry, or something that looks old, but you don't want to just hear a bell, you might try and find one of these online. So we will hear the hour chime. You'll see the Westminster side do 4 rotations, and then it will activate the strike side and it will count the hour. And that is the 5 o'clock hour as compared to as you can see, this clock is really well made. This is not an inexpensive clock. That is walnut, the original mahogany veneer. And with this off, you can see it is probably aluminum. That might be a dead giveaway for an 1800s clock compared to the 1960s or 70s. And you can see, again, they also imitated the cracks of what would have happened on a painted dial for the most part. My dial is not perfect. I will get it repaired eventually. Though it does give it character. I might try and fix it a little bit. But you can see the cracks in the paint that they were trying to emulate. Put them back together now. Well, there you have it. Comparison between an original Eli Terry pillar and scroll clock from the 1820s and a remanufacture of a pillar and scroll from the 1970s. They're both amazing clocks in their own right. I happen to love the Terry clock because of its beauty, its history, its importance. I have to admit, I do like a Westminster chime. It's a German Motte. The clock on the left has an 8-day movement in it. You wind it once every Sunday. It plays Westminster chimes on the quarter hour on beautiful chime rods. The clock on the right rings a bell every hour, and you have to wind it every day. So I would highly recommend, if you could ever find one of these imitations, I would highly recommend, if you like the old original pillar and scroll style and you don't feel like working on or repairing wooden gears or movements, I would go with the clock on the left, honestly. The one on the right is worth over $1,000. The one on the left you can probably get for around 130 to 200, depending on how long you want to look and condition, of course. I am not going to get rid of the one on the left. I really like that clock. I had it long before I had the Terry clock because I never thought I'd find an Eli Terry clock that I really liked at a reasonable price, and I finally found one. But I still really enjoy the clock on the left. And for what it's a top-notch clock. As you can see. Especially if you went to Boston College or MIT or Harvard. It's got a great image on the tablet. Okay, so this is the clock I sang. Thanks for watching. I really do appreciate this. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed it. And if you have any questions about either of these style clocks, text me, email me, add a comment below. I'm a little slow at the comments because I'm rather busy, but I will hopefully get to them eventually. So, take care.